Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Our special guest today is John Reynolds from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Vero Beach, Florida, has a home in each place. John is an author, an adventurer, a mountaineer, a frogman, and a cancer survivor. I'm looking, John, here at a resume here, and it looks like it's out of a who's who. President, CEO of National Peace Garden Foundation, author of 3 books, and we'll take a look at those in just a minute. Former CEO of Outward Bound, veteran of 41 Outward Bound courses, chairman, CEO of Ward Howell, executive search firm, one of the largest, I understand, in the world, 56 offices worldwide. President of Heat Industries, executive vice president, investment banker, director of corporate development, factory personnel manager, cocoa buyer, West Africa, 4 years in Ghana, Volkswagen Porsche distributor, Golden Gloves and AAU boxer, writer of haiku poetry, and then this is very significant, underwater demolition team Navy officer in the Korean War. And in a few minutes we'll take a look at being featured on CNN Pinnacle.
Well, as some people have said, Lynn, I couldn't hold a job, so I had to keep moving on from one to another.
Kept
probably.
moving on. Honorary of Doctor of Laws degrees and humane letters, New York City Marathon 6 times with a disabled runner. You have a phenomenal background. Where were you raised?
So I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and on a little dirt road in the town called Irving Avenue. Walked to grade school, the Kenwood School. It was down the hill and probably a half mile away. In those days, didn't have school buses much.
I suppose you walked uphill and downhill both ways?
Well, we came home for lunch.
Yeah?
Walked back for lunch and then walked to the Kenwood School, and which was a wonderful experience. And my sister, who's now 86, is a volunteer teacher in Kenwood School.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're spending half your time up in Minneapolis and the other half down in the Vero Beach area?
Well, we're snowbirds. We flee the snow in Minnesota before it begins to fly too deeply and go down to Florida, where we have a place on the ocean that's very nice.
Well, I know that you were confronted with the words, you have cancer. And not only do you have cancer, but it's an aggressive form. We're going to come back to that. I understand you were told, you got to get your life in order. Things are winding down, and there's not much we can do for you. But we're going to come back to that in a minute.
Right.
I want to go back into your early childhood, and I do know that the Wall Street Journal was intrigued by your unusual combination of corporate and not-for-profit careers and did a feature article on you. And then CNN produced a 30-minute special entitled Pinnacle. And I want to take just one look here. And you can make a comment on it, but it had to do with some of the early formative years of your life. We'll take a look at that right now.
They were intrigued by the fact I'd kind of back and forth between the corporate world and not-for-profit, which made me a little bit unusual. So that's kind of why they
came
did
in,
it.
And it was a 30-minute...
A 30-minute special.
30-minute program.
Aired worldwide in 1988, I think.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a look at just a little clip here, and it'll give us a little insight into some of your early beginnings.
Your father died when you were 12. That's a rather pivotal stage for
that was a pivotal stage. So I didn't kind of know which way to go at that point. And I was kind of off base for a couple of years. As a teenager, you're off base anyway, but I was particularly off base. And this particular experience in this little country day school, there was a boxing coach named Percy Villa. And Percy somehow took me under his wing, and he said, Reynolds, we're going to teach you how to box. And from that point on, my self-image had changed.
In boxing, John Reynolds took some hard knocks, but he was the first student at Williams College to compete in the Golden Gloves middleweight division.
Sports made me feel okay about what I was about.
Otherwise, do you think we'd be talking to you now from a prison cell?
It's certainly a possibility that having started off with my grand theft auto of the family car and speeding out onto the highways of Minnesota.
Do you think you would have gone bad?
So, I don't think so. I think there was a very strong moral compass in the family.
Do you think if your father hadn't have died, you'd have been where you are now?
I can't answer that one. Certainly, he was portrayed as kind of a romantic figure. He was a developer of our first aircraft engines in World War II, and so if a person isn't there, you have this kind of idealized image of what who they were and what they did. So I was always trying to, I think, outdo him. And I always felt that I was going to be dead at 53.
Now, why did you think you were going to be dead at 53?
Well, that's when he died. And
Okay.
he died suddenly. And he'd been an athlete, he'd been a tennis player, and so forth. And in those days, they couldn't do much about heart disease. He had a heart condition the doctors knew about, but they didn't tell him.
And so you thought you were going to genetically
So
inherit
suddenly he
the
was
same
gone,
thing.
and I just figured, well, okay, that's how long my runway is age 53. So I better get it all done in a hurry and get it done while I'm still under 53.
Well, as I look at your life, you're trying to crowd an awful lot into that 50-some years. Now, tell me, this individual had quite an impact upon your life at a very formative stage.
This boxing coach.
This boxing coach,
Right.
yeah.
Well,
tell us what happened.
Well, I know you're a boxer too,
Right.
so I relate to that. Well, I was not into the athletic program in the school much, but he came after me in my sophomore year in high school. And he taught me how to box, and then he told me I should go in the boxing tournament in the school. And I won the middleweight division.
Did you?
And at that point, the football coach came and said, Reynolds, we want you out for the team. And so then I played football for 2 years. I did okay. I was first string junior and senior years. And that gave me self-confidence. Kind of the self-image changed a lot. And that was pivotal.
At a very, very important point.
very important
very
time.
important point in your life.
Yeah.
So you went on, and where did you go to school then?
So, well, I didn't know where to go to school. And my father was gone, and we didn't really have the money to do a college tour. But both my sisters, older sisters, had gone to Smith. So I asked them, where should I go to college? And they said, well, the smoothest guys go to Williams. And I said, well, I want to be smooth. So I said, I'm going to go to Williams.
And where's Williams?
Williams is in Williamstown, Massachusetts.
Okay.
It's a small liberal arts college. And now it's pretty tough to get into. In those days, maybe not. But that's the only place I applied, never seen it. Went off to Massachusetts.
And you spent 4 years there. And
4 years there.
Graduated with honors.
Graduated with honors,
Yeah.
played 4 years of football there. And then that's when I started in the Golden Gloves, just because nobody had done it.
Prior to that time.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So after you graduated, what happened?
So, well, I went to work in New York for an advertising group, Vicks Vapor Rub.
Oh,
And
sure. the
They
old
had
Vicks.
one of the best training programs in the country, and I had written an advertising program in a contest. They picked 12 people from around the country based on this program we'd done, and they hired me. Off I went, but the Korean War was going strong, and I knew I better get into it. So I volunteered for the Navy that fall. I was only working for them 3 or 4 months, and they were very, very good to me. They paid me their bonuses for 4 years while I was in the Navy.
Did they really?
And when I got out, I didn't go to work for them. I went to Stanford Business School, and I sent them a check for the money they'd paid me because I didn't think it was right to keep it since I wasn't coming back to work. And they said, no, we won't take it, and they sent it back.
Well, we're going to come back to the time you spent there in the Navy, but we do have another feature here in CNN that talks a little bit about your time with Outward Bound, and I want to take a look at that right now.
Building a career is like climbing a mountain, one step at a time. John Reynolds knows a lot about reaching the top. As a mountain climber, he has scaled some of the world's tallest peaks. And as CEO of Ward Howell, one of the world's largest executive search firms, he has placed hundreds of CEOs at the pinnacle.
Is Bill Robertson about? In hiring people, there's nothing more important than character. You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you're lacking in some essential element of character, or you haven't got a moral compass that's going to take you to the right place, it's not going to work.
In his own career, John Reynolds followed an unusual route to the top. He changed jobs frequently, and while he was in the military, Reynolds co-founded the U.S. Navy SEALs, a tough underwater commando unit. In business, Reynolds learned the ropes working in profit and not-for-profit corporations, including government intelligence.
Tell us about your experience there with the Navy SEALs.
Well,
You're a frogman.
right. I joined the Navy, and I became a deck officer.
Okay.
And I was bored stiff because the ship was run by the Navy chiefs, and I didn't really know what was going on. But I thought to myself, well, I can run, I can swim, I'm fairly in shape, and I'm going to go into underwater demolition. So I volunteered for underwater demolition and went through that training, which is still the same training they use for the Navy SEALs, except the SEALs added the airborne element to it. And went to serve in Korea, operating out of Japan. And another officer and I began to take UDT airborne by jumping out of helicopters. And co-founder of the SEALs is a little too strong. I played a small part in getting them going, but taking them airborne was the genesis of the SEALs.
Well, tell me what we have right here. Make a comment as we
Well,
zoom
we
in on
were
this
trying
picture
to
here.
learn how fast the helicopter could go and still have the swimmers hit the water and not lose consciousness and not skip like a stone. And that was interesting because we had boats to pick people up who skipped like stones. And but that was, we finally worked out a way to drop swimmers from helicopters behind
So
a smoke
this was really in the early days of the Frogman.
Well, Frogmen had been going a while.
Had they?
Yeah, but they hadn't ever gone airborne.
Okay. And tell me what we have here on this one here.
Well, this is a group of Navy officers who were just completing our training. We were out on San Clemente Island off California. This was the final exam to become a frogman in UDT.
Okay. Well, now, you were for a number of years, you worked with Outward Bound. And tell us a little bit about your experience with Outward Bound. You led a number of different expeditions. You're working with, was it just kids? Was it certain
Well, there
kind
was
of
a little
kids?
connection with the SEAL teams because my son came to me and said, Dad, I would like to go to Outward Bound. I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, they're giving a briefing at the high school in New Canaan, Connecticut. And I attended it, and the briefing was given by a former SEAL. So he and I traded some stories, and he worked for Outward Bound. Then he invited me to go down on an invitational expedition with Outward Bound, which was a rafting trip down the Colorado River. In fact, I think you've got a photo of that rafting trip.
Going down the trip?
1974, going down the Colorado River on
This
Cataract Canyon, and there I am trying to steer the raft through the rapids, and I was hugely impressed with what Outward Bound was doing. We did some rock climbing, and we did a mini Outward Bound course. And I went on their board, and a few years later, they asked me would I be CEO. And I said, you bet.
And you were there for a number of years.
I was CEO 10 years.
For 10 years.
And it was the best job I ever had.
And I understand while you were in that experience, you went into the New York Marathon did I hear 6 times?
I did 6 marathons, but I didn't run them very fast. I was asked to run it by the head of something called the Achilles Track Club that uses running as a therapy for people who've had terrible injuries. They've lost a leg, or they're blind, or they've had cerebral palsy. And Dick Traum called me, said, Reynolds, I want you to do the marathon. And it'll be good for Outward Bound and good for Achilles. And I said, Dick, come on, I quit running 10 years ago. He said, no, you can do it. I'll get you somebody very slow to help. You'll be running it as a helper to a disabled person. And I did it with Sandy Davidson. It took us 7 hours to do it. And he was quite disabled from a stroke. At the end of the race, nobody could tell who was disabled. I was lurching and throwing one leg out in front, and he was lurching, and we made it.
Well, see, the winners, the ones that come in first, they come in 2 hours and 10 minutes or 12 minutes. But I tell you, the real winners are those that are coming in at 6 hours, 7 hours,
yeah,
8
it's
hours.
It's a long time to do it.
There's a determination and a victory by those that come across the line.
And we got our gold medal, and we felt wonderful about it. I did several more with the same fellow.
Oh, it's a phenomenal experience. And you're a mountain climber here. I've got a couple here I want you to comment on because all of these pictures are tied in with a personality. It's tell us where this one is.
Well, this one is on the slopes of Mount McKinley. This was in the late 70s, and we had flown into Anchorage, and then the train up to Talkeetna, and then flown by ski plane onto the slopes of McKinley, and then off we were carrying these big packs. They weighed 80 pounds.
Huge packs.
Yeah.
Well, I saw another one here. I think that was when you were mountain climbing. Here's one. Actually, this may be over in Africa.
Yeah, that was trekking and tracking lions in Africa at that time.
Tracking lions?
Tracking lions.
What do you do when you find one?
On foot. Well, you just stand very still and hope they don't come after you.
And I think I saw another one here that may have been over there in Nepal.
Well, actually, that one is Nepal over there.
This one over here is in Nepal.
That's Nepal, and we were doing a climb of what they call a trekking peak, but it was 22,000 feet high, called Mount Poldor, and that was with Outward Bound. That was a wonderful trip in Nepal.
And there may have been one more here that we'll take a look at.
That's the top of Kilimanjaro. And that was a while ago. I climbed Kilimanjaro twice.
Did you?
And this was the early climb, and there's more snow in those days than there is now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been on top of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, it's
and
melting
there was more
off.
snow there in this
Yeah.
picture than when I was there,
Yeah,
which was even a number of years
off.
ago.
That was my guide, and he would keep saying, "Poli, poli, sahib," to the summit.
I remember
meaning
Poli.
Slowly, slowly.
Yes, slowly, slowly.
Right, right.
Let's stop and take a look. You know, a few years ago, you were diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
Apparently, it was a very aggressive form. And from what I understand, the doctor said, you know, John, you better go home and get your life in order. And you were on a journey of hope. I mean, your whole life has
Right.
been a journey, one adventure after another. But you were finally diagnosed. Tell us a little bit about your journey to Loma Linda, and then I'm going to have you share a poem that you wrote just before you had your treatment. But,
Right, right.
Tell us about your journey here to Loma Linda.
Well, I was diagnosed in June 2002.
Okay.
And my PSA had gone up only a little bit, but it had gone up. And so I cautioned people, if it goes up, check it. Mine had gone from 2.5 to 3.8. Not really
Which is
very
not
high.
a large number now.
But my doctor was smart enough and said, we didn't need to check it. And they found a lump, and I said, oh, we got to do a biopsy. And did a biopsy, and they said, bad news. It was very aggressive. It was a Gleason 10, which is the most aggressive kind there is.
So 10 is the largest number there is in
there
terms
isn't anything
of the
any
rating.
worse, and they don't see them very often.
Right.
They're fairly rare. And it had spread some. So one of the great clinics in this country said, Reynolds, you know, not much we can do for you. You got about 6 months, and you better get your stuff in order.
They were telling you had about 6 months, then
Yeah, they said
better.
that's what it is. And they said, well, we can do some hormones, which they did, which was the right thing at that time to block the testosterone. But that was a bit of a blow.
Well, so, I mean, you know, many people would just give up. You know, you're confronted with this, you got 6 months, and if you got 6 months, you better start getting everything in order.
Right.
But did you decide you were going to fight this thing?
I decided I wouldn't accept their diagnosis.
You
In
wouldn't
fact,
accept it?
No, the doctor said, do you really want to fight this thing? You know, as if it was kind of hopeless. And I said, you bet I do. And he said, all right, we're going to give you a triple dose of hormones. You're not going to like it, but we'll give you a triple dose. And I said, okay, that's what we're going to do. And it was the right thing to do. And later on, we began to figure out what course of treatment we wanted to do. And we contacted a lot of people, a lot of hospitals, and fortunately, just serendipity, although I'm told there's no
Nothing by
there's
accident.
no coincidences.
Right.
I was put in touch with Bob Marchini, the wonderful guy who runs
Author of the You Can Survive Prostate
exactly.
Cancer.
And he and I had lunch, and then I said, well, I'm going to go to Loma Linda. And then I worried they wouldn't accept me because I was such a bad risk. And but they did. And thank heavens, because that was a wonderful experience. And here it is 5 years later, and I'm doing well.
Well, you've written a number of books, but you wrote this poem, and I noticed that you wrote it just a few days before you began treatment. And I wonder if you wouldn't share this with the audience, because it's a very powerful poem, I think.
I'd be glad to. This was I was kind of looking at what I'd done, and that I didn't have such a long
Kinda
runway.
reflecting
maybe.
on your life
And
and-
reflected on my life, and it's called Once. Once we were young and warriors. Once our wings beat strong to carry us to the high places near the sun. Once we stood on summits with frosty breath. We saw Africa, Europe, Alaska, and the mighty Himalayas spread out in majestic panoply below us. The power and solitude of the peaks awesome. Once our arms were sinewy and tan as we rushed down the magnificent rivers, the Colorado, the Biobío, the Green, the Yampa, the Salmon, the Chattooga. We marveled at the power of the great drops and holes as we planned our routes through the maelstrom with pounding hearts. We spoke at night around the fire in the depths of canyons carved 100 million years ago. We felt small and knew the impermanency of our passing. Tomorrow we would be gone. A million years hence, the river would still be there, carving its way to the sea. Once our backs were broad and straight, and we lightly carried great packs over lonely and special places in our world. The Brooks Range, the Ganesh Himal, Bhutan, the ancient Inca Trail above the Urubamba River, the Highline Trail in the mighty Wind River Range. We were self-sufficient in our geodesic dome tents and our Coleman stoves and freeze-dried dinners. Our thoughts turned to the mountain men who lived alone in such magnificent places. And for a moment, we felt their oneness with the big country, their sense of competence and self-sufficiency in the impartial vastness of the high country. Once our feet trod places where the great explorers risked all to plumb the next unknown ridge or valley. Jim Bridger, Meriwether Lewis, John Wesley Powell, even my great-great-uncle, William Reynolds of the Tetons. Once our lives stretched out endlessly to horizons unknown. That we felt up to new tasks was a given. We would give it a try. We courted risk because it's made us seem whole. We wanted to go where others had not gone. We thought to build our concept of self, which was fragile, by doing what others did not dare do. Once we sought to push the envelope of experience, frightened as we were to do so, and sought completeness by coming out the other side. In a Navy underwater demolition team, there were times of pure terror and pure joy, swimming in the cold, clear water off California's San Clemente Island, feeling like an otter as we dove and turned and glided around the great columns of kelp, dappled in sunlight and towering 50 feet up from the sea floor. Our bodies felt omnipotent. We could dive and swim forever. We were gods of the sea, not knowing that, quote, time held us green and dying, though we sang in our change like the sea, Dylan Thomas. We were naked warriors and masters of a universe that seemed divided more simply into the good and the bad. We were the good guys, and we walked like kings. Once we sought to change the world and set off to do secret things. Was it hubris? Of course. Did it change the world? Maybe an inch. But was it worth it? Yes. Once we traveled the world to find joy, and there were sublime moments, but always we found the greatest joy in human contact and in extending a helping hand. Tears of joy when being part of a companion's breakthrough in summiting a rock face and triumphing over a terrible acrophobia. Tears of joy when waiting with a parent for his troubled son to complete a marathon run at the end of an outward bound course and fall into his father's arms, both sobbing in recognition of their unexpressed love. Once we were bulletproof and immortal, but change, loss, and grief came to us, and tears for loss and anguish coursed our cheeks. Once we were the toughest ones in the valley, but we learned tears are okay, that they come to most of us. If we can accept them, perhaps it's the beginning of wisdom. Now we are struggling to accept our weakened wings. They no longer can carry us over the snow-capped peaks. Our knees will no longer test the Eiger and the Matterhorn. Our backs will not ply the rolling waters of Alaska's mighty Koyukuk River. Now we look at the fabric of our lives and realize that at the bottom of all is the seeking of love. We seek love and return always to those whom we love and who love us, our children and our mate, and the core of what's important and life-affirming for us. They give meaning to all the striving, and they will be our most lasting legacy. Once we said, where's the next mountain? Now we face a mortal challenge in cancer, and we say, I have so much to be grateful for. What a blessed life I've been privileged to lead. But there's more to do, and so cancer's the next mountain. And I say, I will not go gentle into that good night. I may be finding just a little wisdom as I try to accept my weakened wings, as they now seek to carry me up just one more time. Whatever the summit may be, I'm going to try to get there. I hope I've traveled, quote, a short while towards the sun. And I know I'm so blessed by the love and prayers of my beloved wife, my wonderful children, my loving sisters, and my special friends from all parts of life. Whatever the outcome, I've had such a special run in life, and I'm committed to going several more laps.
John, that's a powerful reflection of your thinking, of your philosophy, of your journey. You came to Loma Linda. We've only got a couple of minutes, but in the last minute or two, tell us the impact that Loma Linda had upon you and your life.
Loma Linda was just a transformational experience for me. The love that I felt and the care that the people exhibit in Loma Linda are just extraordinary. And Loma Linda saved my life. There's no question about it. And that's why I'm now involved on the advisory board of the Proton Group and doing what I can to spread the word on Loma Linda. So it was just one of the great experiences. My wife and I spent 8 weeks out here, and the treatment was wonderful, painless, and it cured me. And here I am 5 years later, and I'm just delighted.
Everything about your life has been an adventure. It's been one adventure after another, and this confronting cancer and overcoming cancer is just another step in your journey. And the books that you have here, it's a matter of giving back. I notice you've got a book here on volunteering.
Right.
You got a book here on Beyond Success. You've got Footprints in the Sand. And everything that I've discovered as I've known you, John, the last few years, it's about making an impact, about making a difference. And this experience of having cancer and coming to Loma Linda was just another step in the journey that you've had. And if you had one thing to share with our audience in closing, what would it be about giving back?
I would say that making the world a better place and having it become a slightly better place by having lived in it is what it's about. And Loma Linda is all about that, making the world a better place and making man whole. And I'm grateful to have had this experience at Loma Linda.
Well, John, we are so pleased that you've been our guest and the way that God has blessed you. And I'm confident that He's not through with you yet. He's got many things for you yet to make a difference in people's lives. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.